Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Gile, and I'm here with the Sierra Club to give you a little primer on how to testify at the upcoming MG&E rate case. So this is, or more formally, the PSC public hearing for Madison Gas and Electric. So we're going to talk about just sort of the background of what this case is and why it exists, actually the nuts and bolts of testifying, and the talking points that we've pulled together that we think are important to get across during your testimony. Though obviously there are many other things that you might choose to talk about as well. So this public hearing is being called by the Public Services Commission, or the PSC. If you don't know, they're the body that regulates utilities in Wisconsin. And at regular intervals, utility companies have to ask the PSC to approve their plans for the coming usually 2 years for rates that they're going to charge customers and how they're going to produce the energy for the coming years. And this sort of requesting of permission is the rate case. And this is a part of a democratic process. So members of the public are able to give feedback on these utility plans, these rate cases, through spoken or written comments. Like normally the spoken comments would be in person, but obviously not so much these days. So we have some telephone spoken comments that you will be able to give.
Hi everyone, my name is Tony. I'm an intern for the Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the MG&E rate case and how this impacts us. So we all know that coal is dirty and it causes air pollution, health problems, carbon emissions, and not only that, but it also is really expensive, and you and I are the ones that have to foot the bill for that. So coal isn't the future we want, and it's not the future we need. So our cities have promised for 100% clean energy, and our communities are in support of that. So our utility, MG&E, or Madison Gas and Electric, has proposed a rate settlement that disincentives clean energy and energy efficiency. This creates an economic burden on customers and perpetuates the use of dirty and costly coal-powered energy. So it just really shouldn't be this way. So I encourage you to take action and submit a comment today in order to make change. Thank you.
And obviously we're telling you about it because we have some concerns with the plans that are being proposed. And we are specifically asking the PSC to oppose MG&E's settlement for basically 4 different reasons. It really undermines progress towards the 100% clean energy goals for the communities that MG&E serves, like Madison and the surrounding suburbs who are dedicated to 100% green energy. It continues their current rate structure, which is regressive. It perpetuates racial and economic inequalities, sort of get into that in more detail in other locations. And it keeps the status quo and asks for permission to continue to pass the cost of expensive coal plants, which is the majority of MG&E's energy production, and puts those costs on us. And all of that together punishes low income and low energy users. So a little bit of background on the PSC. There are 3 full-time commissioners who decide the cases that are brought to the Public Services Commission. They are they are appointed by Governor Evers, or whoever is governor of Wisconsin. And there's a rotating chairperson and then 2 different commissioners who might rotate through the chairperson position. And though these are the folks that we're actually preparing testimony for, they may or may not actually be on the call. There's a judge who sort of officiates the process and might be the only person you're actually speaking to in the immediate moment, but these are the folks that you're really preparing your testimony to be heard by so that they can take your opinion and your knowledge into consideration. So nuts and bolts. To attend the hearing, you have to make a phone call on Thursday, October 8th at 1 p.m. And it should go for maybe about an hour, a little bit more, depends on how many people want to testify and how efficient things go. You don't have to register, you can just call, but the Sierra Club has an RSVP mechanism so that you can be reminded of the details that are on this slide and have something that's important to your calendar and just sort of generally be a little bit more in the loop. So like I said, it's telephone only. The dial-in number is here, and there's an access code as well. So most of them are quite a few digits, but it's also in the RSVP and in all of the online information. If you can't attend the telephone hearing, you can submit written comments through either the PSC website, which is super confusing and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you can go to the Sierra Club and use our online testimony submission form. So a little bit more of a description of what a telephone hearing looks like. They're different than if you've done other kinds of hearings in the past. There will be people on the call at the start time, that 1 p.m., but there's probably gonna be some tech troubleshooting at the beginning. So if you just hear people trying to make things work and not acknowledging your presence, that's normal. But then the hearing will continue until every caller who wants to provide testimony has had the ability to do so. If you call after that 1 p.m. start time, you're going to hang out on hold for a while until the judge can step away and accept you into the call at a time that wouldn't be disruptive. All telephone lines for community members will be muted during the call unless you have been asked to speak, either to say who you are or to provide your testimony. So you'll sort of hang out on mute for a while, and then the judge will go around virtually and ask everybody who they are and if they have a prepared statement. If you say yes, after everyone has sort of been accounted for, you'll eventually be called on to provide your testimony. Then when you're called on, you'll get unmuted. You'll sort of hear, you've been unmuted. And then you state your name, if you're an MG&E customer, and then give your statement. So some details on how to actually give that statement, how to prepare your testimony and give it an effective way. You should prepare for 3 minutes max, maybe a little bit less of testimony. Start by saying your name. Like I said, if you're an MG&E customer, because that in particular, if you are, explains why you're invested in this particular decision. Always thank them for taking time and listening to you, and be very clear about your ask. Make your statement and conclude by restating your ask and thanking them again. Be kind and courteous. You're much easier to be listened to if people like listening to you, for better, for worse. If you keep it personal, people are also much more engaged. There's lots of research that shows when you're trying to convince people of your point of view, that personal statements and stories are the most compelling. And you put a human face on the impact, and humans like knowing about other humans. You can throw some stats in there because numbers can be convincing, but that shouldn't be your focus if you have any way to turn it back to a human connection. Keep it simple so that it's understandable and communicable, and make it clear, especially what your ask is. If you are following our ask, which is to reject the proposal, say that specifically. And listen to the testimony of others and underscore their statements. Are people saying things that are really well said, really articulate, that fit with your narrative? Elevate those and repeat them, right? Repetition really helps things stick in people's mind. And then highlight things that others haven't mentioned yet that you think are important. This is all a lot of tips and tricks, but really what matters the most is just feeling confident and feeling practiced. You're the expert of the testimony that you've provided. If the idea of sort of going off the cuff and changing what you're doing based on other people's testimony is too much for you, fine. Figure out what makes you comfortable and what makes you feel like you have got your message across. So to that end, write out your testimony beforehand. It's just, especially if this is your first time or one of your first times, trying to go off the cuff is hard. And having something written down makes you feel more confident in what you're trying to say. And then you don't regret that you missed something at the end. As long as you have practiced it a little bit ahead of time and are able to not just read word for word from the page, you can still sound very organic and very engaged in the process. So when we said we're aiming for about 3 minutes, that's about 400 to 500 words, or sort of half a page. So that should be what you're aiming for. So writing your testimony, this is an example of what I might say. I'm probably going to change mine a little bit, but just to give you a flavor of how you can write it ahead of time. And I'll just sort of read through it now. So my name is Victoria Gile. I'm a primary care physician in Madison. My professional expertise is the health effects of climate change and social inequities, and I am concerned that MG&E's proposed rate case will worsen both. Continuing the current rate structure for MG&E perpetuates racial and economic inequalities. MG&E's proposed rate structure and its high fixed fees unfairly impact low-use customers who end up paying significantly more to use less power. Because of systemic inequities in Wisconsin, low-income customers and people of color make up a large share of those low-use customers. High fixed charges also prevents progress towards Madison's 100% clean energy goals. Because customers must pay the fixed charge each month, no matter how much energy we use, customers like me will have less incentive to save energy. That's the opposite of what we need for more equitable, lower cost, cleaner energy. Customers should have the maximum amount of control over their bills and maximum incentives to save energy and invest in options like solar panels. This rate settlement proposes the status quo and asks for permission to continue to pass the costs of expensive coal plants to us, the consumers. To achieve my community's goal of 100% clean energy, coal must be phased out of our energy mix as quickly as possible.
Hello, my name is Megan Pierce and I'm a volunteer on Sierra Club's Beyond Coal team. Thank you for taking interest in the public hearing for MG&E rate case. Here is an example of what a public hearing comment can look like. Wisconsin must create a bold and ambitious plan to stop climate change, and the Public Service Commission needs to take action with MG&E's rate case. MG&E's rate settlement case creates unreasonable barriers to clean energy and is one of the highest fixed charges in the Midwest. This use of a fixed charge rather than billing customers based on how much energy they use means customers have less control over their bills and less incentive to save energy as the fixed charge goes up. As we see the effects of climate change continue to negatively impact our environment, and I think the worst thing the Public Service Commission could do is continue to approve this archaic system. The continued use of coal plants, like that of Columbia Coal Plant, is the opposite of what we need for more equitable, lower cost, and cleaner energy. Nearly half of Wisconsin's electricity comes from coal, and coal plants are the biggest source of carbon dioxide emissions in the electricity sector. Coal seriously affects our air quality, and I have personally seen the negative effects on my family. My sister and father who struggle with asthma, and my grandmother who lives with COPD. Why continue to hurt the health of the people in our state when we can transition to safer, cheaper, and cleaner energy? Turning a blind eye to the realities faced when people live near a coal plant when we have clean energy available to transition to enforces the community members are lesser than, not worthy of clean air, land, and water. This needs to end, especially when facing the current pandemic. The high fixed charges reduces the amount of customer conservation and investment in things like more efficient homes and appliances. That leads to higher electric and gas use and thus more pollution impact on our communities. Coal plants are a significant source of this pollutant. All of the people in the state need to have their health and well-being valued. Let us end air pollution from coal-fired plants, as it is linked with asthma, cancer, heart, lung, and neurological problems. We need to do our part now so that the children in this state can have a future they can look forward to. And to be honest, I'm afraid of what my own future, along with my friends and families, will look like. As an individual, I am working to think of personal actions I can take in regards to climate change. But I need you, the Public Service Commission, to help me in this, especially when it comes to energy sources. As I mentioned, the financial burden is too great to continue the use of coal plants. It leads to higher bills, and in the medium to long term, as higher use prolongs the life of MG&E's economic coal plants, increases transmission costs, and increases the amount of cost of the grid as a whole. For some members of our community, MG&E bills remain unaffordable, and the COVID-19 crisis has increased the number of people in our community facing economic hardship. I am grateful for the Public Service Commission's leadership in extending the moratorium for shutoffs. But the problem of affordability remains, and it is squarely an issue in this settlement. MG&E's proposed rate structure and highly fixed fees unfairly impact low-use customers, who end up paying significantly more to use less power. In Wisconsin, low-income customers make up a large share of low-use customers, and because of systemic problems in our state and country, low-income customers are disproportionately people of color. Excuse me. Continuing the current rate structure for MG&E perpetuates the inequalities. From an equity perspective, lowering the fixed charge enables lower income and fixed income customers to reduce their energy burden by controlling their energy use. Continuing the current high fixed charges undermines and stems the needed progress towards our 100% clean energy goals for our community. To solve the imminent climate crisis and make our energy more equitable, customers need greater control over both their energy use and their bills. We need customers and communities to be more empowered with more choices and more control in order to lead on climate solutions, not to be even more captive to the utilities. To achieve our goal of 100% clean energy, coal must be phased out of our energy mix as quickly as possible. The rate settlement proposes the status quo, and thus asks for permission to continue to pass the cost of coal plants to our community's residents. And it's now clear that clean energy beats dirty coal on cost and environmental values. I ask the Public Service Commission to no longer hold our community back by disallowing utilities to continue to force customers to pay to continue operating inefficient, uneconomic, and polluting coal plants. Thank you for your time.
So you should take some time to write down words, themes, and ideas that make sense to you. I've seen that my example is maybe suboptimal and with its lack of sort of that emotional, personal punch. So think about what your connection is to our talking points and how you can tie it into a personal story. Just sort of jot some things down and brainstorm and use that to craft your testimony. And then write it, read it, practice it a couple of times so that you feel comfortable, and then you are ready to share your voice in the democratic process. So as a reminder, once you have that testimony written, you show up by telephone on Thursday, October 8th. You can RSVP through the Sierra Club for reminders and updates. And if something comes up and you're not able to participate in the audio hearing, then you can submit your comment in a written form, which is easiest to do again through the Sierra Club in our Add Up platform. If you have any questions up until the rate case hearing, or even during the rate case hearing, Sierra Club staff will be available for questions via email. We're hoping that we can put together a little bit of an event around the hearing. We'll sort of see how that goes, but we hope to see as many of you there as we can, or hear you, and hope that you enjoy this foray into participating in our democracy. Thanks.